Hello folks, this is Scott with Dallas Paint Correction and Auto Detailing here in Dallas, Texas. I want to talk about rinseless washing. I actually have Optimum's no rinse wash and shine in my hand. That's cool. This is probably one of the most popular rinseless washes on the market. A lot of my fellow detailers or maybe car enthusiasts who live in water restricted areas, you're kind of forced to maybe use a rinseless wash or even a waterless wash because you don't have the ability to use free-flowing water. Well, Optimum came up with a solution. A lot of people like this method, whether or not they live in a water restricted area or not. They like this method because it's quick. Basically, you would have this stuff diluted in a 5-gallon bucket or whatever you want to do at 256 to 1, so it's very economical. And what you would do is fill your bucket up, put the dilution in the bucket, and you'd have Optimum actually sells a big red sponge. They have this big red sponge you dunk into the bucket, and you go across the panel and you encapsulate and you pull the dirt off the panel. I'm not going to get into all that mumbo jumbo because I don't know how that works, but anyway, let's move on. I do know how it works and I actually dispute it, but we'll let it go. But here's the deal. For those people who are in California, my fellow professional detailers who are forced to work on people's cars and they don't have access to water, this is a very nice method to be able to use. But there's a way to, I want to talk about a way to do it which will limit the scratching, because here's the deal. If my fellow professional detailer came up to a car and the car was pretty dirty, had a lot of dust and dirt on it, maybe the car hasn't been washed in a month, they don't have the ability for free-flowing water or power washer, and if you just use the big red sponge alone on a car that's pretty hammered, you're going to have issues. You're raising the risk of scratching the paint. That just makes common sense, although Optimum tries to dispute it all the time, right? Or that's what I hear anyway. But here, I want to show you something. Get a load of this thing I've got in my hand. This is a nozzle. Watch what's going to happen when I use it on the car. What I've been able to do is flush a lot of the contaminants off the paint before I begin my rinseless wash. There are guys out there that will use a pre-soak method. They'll take a pump sprayer, they're working on a really dirty car, and they'll kind of soak the panel down to give them some extra lubricity on the panel, maybe give that O&R a chance to break down the dirt, whatever. But this little thing right here, I want to show you this thing because I've been testing it for 3 months and I'm in love with it, and I think it could be an answer for a lot of guys in water restricted areas. And I'll bring you in and show you this thing. This is a very cheap proposition. Take a look at this. Folks, what I have here is the Becker, and what is this thing called? The Kraus and Becker, right? You can buy this thing at Harbor Freight. I paid $169 for it 3 months ago. I've been testing it for the last 3 months. Every day for the last 3 months to check out durability and longevity of the machine. It's working great. But here's the reality. This thing is a pump sprayer. It's a paint sprayer. It's an airless paint sprayer, right? I'm just pumping O&R through it, or water. It's just basically lubricated water. I'm not pumping paint through it, an enamel or a lacquer where the viscosity is much higher. This is very easy for the pump to transfer through that fluid. Plus, you got to remember, most rinseless washes are a non-building agent. They don't clog things up. They're lubricated water. They got some surfactants in them and some lubrication in them. It's perfectly fine for this sprayer. So it's going to come out this hose, and this is electric, by the way. You plug this in. There's a hose that comes off it and goes into the 5-gallon bucket. So you guys would have a gamma seal, right? You got a 5-gallon bucket with your O&R already diluted in there at 256 to 1. You're going to use this thing to facilitate this nozzle. And what's going to happen is you're going to have the opportunity to be able to flush the contaminants off the paint. And it uses very little water, but now I flushed this panel off. I've got the dirt and dust off it. Maybe I got O&R in that bucket, so I'm using it as my pre-soak and my ability to push the dirt off before I go in there with my big fancy red sponge, or maybe my microfiber cloth. Maybe I'm a Gary Dean supporter and I like this method. I actually like this method too. Gary's very smart. But here's another thing when it comes to rinseless washing. We got to be worried about water runoff, right? But plus tires and rims, this is a difficult area for guys that have to do waterless washing. are rinseless washing because they're forced by local government. To be able to clean these wheels, it's tough. You might have a bucket with O&R or your cleaner or whatever, and you're using a wheel woolly, hard to rinse it off. Get a load of this thing. Look at the pressure. And then I'm going to have you look on the ground and look at the water runoff. It's very contained right at the ridge of the car. This stuff isn't going to flow away on you because a lot of water restricted areas you can't have runoff going out into the street and get into the drain system. So this is going to be very contained as well. I think for $169 for that little machine right there, I've been testing it for 3 months. Again, we're not pumping paint through it. We're pumping something far easier for the pump to be able to come through this for 169 bucks to give you a much safer rinseless wash method. You pick the rinseless wash you like. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a fan of O&R, but just using a big red sponge alone or the microfiber cloths on a really dirty car can be a little risky with being able to scratch the paint. So take advantage of something that's so cheap. $169, comes with everything you need. It's electric. And go ahead and just make rinseless washing so much safer, so much easier. If you wait for my industry to help you out with this stuff, because my heart goes out to my fellow detailers out in California, but if you wait for my industry, yeah, they'll give you a fancy soap. Yep, they'll give you a big red sponge. But they really have never really given us anything that will facilitate or make the process safer. Again, they probably don't want to do that because they don't want to tip their hat and go, you know what, this may not be the best method if your car's really dirty. But now we've made it easier for $169. Very easy process to be able to flush the contaminants off the paint and make it easier. No runoff. You don't have to worry about that stuff going in the street. You can clean the wheels, the tires, the wheel wells so much easier. This thing produces about 1,000 to 3,000 PSI. There's a little knob on that thing where you can control the pressure. This is not 3,000 PSI like out of a power washer. You can put your hand in front of this thing. It's very atomized. So it's not like it's going to hurt the paint if you're very close. It won't hurt the paint. It's not like 3,000 PSI coming out of a power washer. I just wanted to share that with you. But what a cool little trick, right? Put O&R in the bucket with your Gamma Seal on it. That thing weighs 24 pounds. Carry it with you if you're a professional. It takes very little space. I've been testing it for 3 months. It works great, guys. Just wanted to share it with you. Love you all. I hope that helps some of my fellow brothers and sisters in California or other water-restricted areas. Talk to you guys soon.